नमस्कार, कला कहानी में आपका स्वागत है। कला कहानी में हमारे आज के मेहमान हैं अम्बी सुब्रमण्यम और उनकी बहन बिंदु सुब्रमण्यम। आप दोनों अंतर्राष्ट्रीय ख्याति प्राप्त वायलिन माएस्ट्रो डॉक्टर एल सुब्रमण्यम के पुत्र और पुत्री हैं। Ambi Subramaniam is hailed as the new king of Indian classical violin. He is also a fusion performer, has collaborated with eminent musicians. He is an orchestral soloist, and apart from violin, he has also received distinctions in piano. अपनी बहन बिंदु के साथ आप सापा स्कूल्स प्रोग्राम चलाते हैं, जहां 20,000 बच्चों को स्कूलों में संगीत शिक्षा प्रदान की जाती है। Bindu Subramaniam is a singer, songwriter, entrepreneur, author, and music educator. She is the dean of Sappa, an institute that trains musically inclined children to become professional performers, an initiative to integrate music into the mainstream academic curricula. Ambi, welcome to Kala Kahani.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Tell me, you started learning violin from a very young age, from the age of 3, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
Yeah. What was the learning process like, especially for a very small child?
Well, I think initially you start learning because you think it's fun. So I used to see my dad, of course, practicing and playing at home, all these different musicians. So at that time I had like this baby violin, which is about this size. So at that age, I guess I was just kind of trying to imitate what my dad was doing and what everyone else was kind of playing. And I think over the years, it slowly got a little formalized. One important thing that I see even now with kids is that initial exposure needs to be fun, and you need to kind of do it in a way that they feel like they're playing. It was a lot of fun for me, and then slowly my dad kind of brought in boundaries and like, okay, let's start doing some exercises first. Let's start doing some warm-ups and things like that.
Was there a lot of pressure being termed as child prodigy, and there were such high expectations from you?
That expectations that you have of yourself are sometimes a lot more than what others can expect of you. But I think also, in a way, I was lucky that I started early and I had some positive experiences performing when I was young. And I think sometimes positive experiences have nothing to do with skill. You can be fantastic and have some experiences that can kind of that are with you for a long time. But at the same time, I think whatever skill I was playing at, I think what was really nice was at that age, I enjoyed being on stage. I enjoyed the kind of process. There were positive experiences. So I think after that, the rest kind of becomes easier. And I think I was lucky that I started performing on stage before I had all of these thoughts in my head about, okay, I need to be this good, or I am my father's son, or any of those things. You're just performing because you like performing.
At what age did you go on stage? First public performance?
I think it was 6. So I actually used to sing a bit as well growing up. So I first sang on stage when I was 6, and my first violin performance was when I was 7.
Okay. Now tell me, your father is known to be a very exacting teacher, and his style includes Indian as well as Western technique. Was it difficult to take in?
Dad has 2 very distinct personalities. One as a father, and one as a teacher. As a father, he is extremely easygoing, and it's a very different relationship. But as a teacher, I think he is pretty strict, and I think it's because of the standards that he has for himself. I'm very, very grateful for that now. I think initially he would play a phrase and then I would repeat and then he would just say, no, it's not the same. So then I would try the same thing. Then after the second, third, fourth time, I would tell him, no, I'm playing the same thing. Then he's like, no, you're really not. And then he'll show me that there's one thing here, one small thing there that's missing. Uh, but I think that kind of attention to detail is something uh, that has really helped in everything I do. And sometimes when I tell him, you're so strict as a teacher and all of that. Now I can tell him all these things. Then he tells me, you should have seen my father.
Indian classical music learning and playing is quite different to Western classical, where there are notations and everything. So, what was it like for a young child to learn this?
Well, I think in that way I was very lucky because my dad kind of did all the hard work. In his generation, he was probably the first person to kind of do that, and all of those issues that you're talking about. The technique is also quite different. The way you approach the music is different. The way you, like you're saying, you read notation versus listening. So I think he must have gone through a lot to kind of figure out all that processes. So in that way, but when I started learning, uh, he made sure that both were very complementary. So there was never a point where I felt like, okay, if I concentrate on this, then the other music will get affected, or okay, this is what I'm supposed to do here, but it doesn't make sense for the other style of music. So I think in that way, he made sure that it was very complementary. And I think also when you learn both together, um, they really help. So it helps when you're learning both simultaneously versus kind of trying to learn one style of music in reference to another, which sometimes can become tricky.
But you did both together, side by side?
I did both side by side. So that really helped. And my dad also kind of made sure that me, Bindu, my brother Narayana, we all also learned singing. We also learned playing the piano. So I think each thing helped the other.
You started accompanying your father from a very early age. Could you tell us something about some memorable concerts?
I started playing with him regularly on stage from the time I was 13, I think. There was a bit of a mental shift for me around that age, from kind of enjoying music and playing it as a fun hobby versus becoming a musician. So around that age, I decided, okay, I want to become a violinist. What is amazing is you put somebody like my dad in a concert hall full of non-Indian audiences, and he'll know exactly what to play. You put him in a situation where it's 500 Indian musicians, he'll know exactly what to play. And I remember once we went to South Africa. That was my first trip there, and we were doing a classical tour, and one of the shows was for a world music festival. Right before us, there was this amazing Brazilian guitarist who was performing, and he had the audience up. There were no chairs. Everyone was kind of dancing to that, and he was phenomenal. And then right after that was our closing concert for the festival, and I was very confused because at that age I'm like, okay, what are we going to play? We are supposed to do a pure classical thing, but then to see the way that my dad adapted to that show was really an eye opener for me. Because also there are two things. I mean, you want the concert to be successful. You want to make sure that you're playing the right thing for the audience, but also you want to make sure that you're staying true to the music that you are presenting. But to see kind of the way how he adapted was phenomenal. So that's something I'm still learning from him every time we go to different places, we perform together. His skills are unmatched.
You talk of performing all over the world. Now, is it different performing for a Western audience, North Indian audience, and Carnatic listeners?
So a couple of things. I mean, definitely there are some differences, but I wouldn't necessarily categorize it as a non-Indian or a Carnatic or a Hindustani, because sometimes you can play in the same city for five different types of audiences. So sometimes even when I play in Bangalore, for different, it could be for different organization, or it could be for a bunch of school kids, or it could be for a very serious classical music festival. uh, I think it also is very important as a musician to kind of listen to your surroundings, and I think it's not only about what you're presenting at that time, but it's also about uh, kind of understanding the space around you.
How do you feel about the usual 2.5 hour duration for a standard concert?
I would say that depends on the audiences as well. So I went for this amazing concert some time ago. Absolutely phenomenal musicians, and what happened was it was a sold out show. They performed for about 3.5 hours. But what was interesting to see was for the first 2 hours, not a single person had left. After that, you slowly started seeing people leaving. And at the end of the concert, there was a section who had, of course, stayed, and they would have been happy if they performed for another 2 hours. It's a kind of personal decision. Personally, I would not like to see anybody get up and leave. I would always prefer to play 5 minutes less than 5 minutes more. But I think that's a personal choice.
Ambi, do you have any favorite accompanists? Somebody you'd like to have with you for a recital?
On the Mridangam, I have played a lot with V.V. Ramanamurthy ji, Patri ji, D.S.R. Murthy ji, all of them who are phenomenal. Akshay also recently, who I've been playing with. They are amazing musicians. Radha Krishnan ji on Katam, Satya Sai on Mursing, on Tabla, Tanmay Bose ji is amazing. All of these people uh, are absolutely phenomenal. And I think what's really nice is also when we play with them, they add so much of their color, so much of their personality. So when you kind of listen to all these masters and play with them, you also learn so much in the process.
Could you tell us about your first music album? I was reading that you said it was done accidentally.
My first solo album was when I was 16. So I had kind of practiced for that, and I wanted to do a good job. So I had worked hard for that and all of that. And then finally we went to the studio and recorded. And but I heard the album again, and then I was like, okay, no, I don't want to put this out, because I wasn't happy with it at that point. Plus, I uh, I didn't want to kind of look back 10 years later and be disappointed with something that I had put out. So I had actually shelved that, and then finally, I think it was almost 5 years later. So I think just before I turned 21, I recorded an album called Indian Violin. But at that point, that was much more of a spur of the moment thing. I'm like, okay, why don't we just record something now? So I had 4 pieces, and that I had probably practiced for about 3-4 days.
One of your innovative tracks was Chakra with Rajni Gayatri, and it created history. So, could you tell us about that?
Oh, right. So that I really enjoyed. They are phenomenal musicians, of course, and we did it with my band, the Taishadam Project, with Bindu, Mahesh, and Akshay as well. That was really interesting because after I had written the melody, we had actually gone and we had sat with Ranjini Gayatri, and we made a basic track, and we kind of exchanged ideas and all of that. But what was really nice was after the release, we kind of had a jam track. So we took a portion of the track that we used in the track to improvise, and we made a jam track, and we kind of opened it out to ask different people to improvise and upload their own versions. So that kind of blew up, and that was really nice for us to see, because there were so many incredible versions, and sometimes as a composer, it's a very surreal feeling to see so many different versions, and people from around the world adding their color, which you never even thought of.
You recently got your doctorate in music. Why did you feel the need to be academically qualified when you are a performer?
Well, I think both of them are very important. The academic sphere and the performance sphere, uh, you can't look at them independently. So my topic was creating a global violin technique. I see so many violinists where when you try to learn another style of violin playing, for example, if you're a Scottish violinist who wants to learn a little bit of Carnatic music, or if you're a Hindustani musician who wants to learn a little bit of gypsy music, the first, say, 6 months goes in unlearning and relearning technique. So they'll tell you, okay, no, the way you're holding the bow is wrong. In this technique, this is what you need to do. Or so there's so much of unlearning and relearning that has absolutely nothing to do with the music itself. So the hope with this was to kind of create one global violin technique where you can play any style of playing.
Okay. You also work with different symphonies from around the world. Could you tell us about your experience of playing with them?
That is something that I absolutely love, because sometimes, like, whatever experience you have on stage, sometimes when you have more than 100 people on stage, and everyone is playing their part, but it's just something very special. And I think that feeling when you are sitting right in the middle of it, and then you're kind of adding a layer on top of whatever they're doing, is something that I absolutely love. I'm really grateful that I've kind of had these experiences with somebody like my father, who's kind of guided me through the process. Because also there, you don't want to be messing up when 100 people are doing their part, and then you come in and then you mess up. You're writing all of these scores. You're writing on music software on the laptop from that piece of paper or from the screen to kind of hear it live is always a surreal experience. So that first, especially when you're writing new music, that first rehearsal before the show, sometimes it'll be a premiere, some festival or some orchestra or somebody would have commissioned that work. So if the concert is happening, say, on the 30th, the 27th or 28th will be the first rehearsal, and that's the first time you're actually hearing the composition live. So that is always a very surreal experience.
And as a musician, whose work has really inspired you, apart from your father?
I've always kind of loved listening to different styles of music. So, and it's been interesting to kind of also see a lot of great violinists from very different genres. So sometimes I'll be listening to a gypsy violinist or a country violinist or a Western classical violinist, and then you listen to something that they do, and then you're like, wait, this is what they're doing here. Could this help me in this tilana that I'm playing? Or could this help me in this alap that I'm doing? So I think sometimes this cross learning really, really helps. I love listening to Robbie Lakatos, who's a Hungarian gypsy violinist, who's absolutely phenomenal. Maxim Vengerov and Hilary Hahn are two Western classical violinists that I love. As a composer, I absolutely love Hans Zimmer's work. I think he has inspired me a lot. So there are a number of musicians, a number of composers. Also, I'm a huge devotee of Beethoven, and so the way he kind of handles one very simple. He'll start with a very simple motif, and then the way he expands it into a full symphonic work, or even if he's doing a piano work, is just something unbelievable. And to kind of think that he was deaf at the end of his career and was still able to do things that none of us can even dream of is just something unbelievable.
Ambi, my next set of questions is for both you and Bindu. Can I invite her?
Absolutely.
Bindu, welcome to Kala Kahani.
Thank you so much for having me.
Tell me, you as a family perform together. Dr. L Subramaniam, your mother, Kavita Krishnamurthy ji, and both of you. So could you tell us about how it started when all of you came together as a family to perform?
I think growing up in a family of musicians, you feel like a lot of things are normal. And for us, I think one of those things was this idea of the family performing together, traveling together. So Ambi, my other brother, Narayana, and I used to kind of, when we were kids, be singing chorus or just kind of be on stage and like, okay, and it was just kind of assumed that, okay, we'll do one song or we'll do two songs. And I think in some sense with my daughter Mahati, it's also the same thing now with the next generation, where it's kind of you're in this musical thing all the time. And I think there was a point when we just assumed it was natural. And then there was a point when we decided that, okay, this is what we choose to do. We actually do want to be musicians. And it's something that we're taking, forward as a career or something that we're passionate about.
When did it all start?
I think it's really hard to pinpoint when it started. I guess we all started learning violin and singing and piano when we were really young. My dad has got like every size of violin from 1/16 upwards. And so I think when we were born, there was sort of a violin allocated to us. And then when we started singing, of course, there was singing. So all of us have learned Western classical piano, Indian and Western classical violin, and Carnatic singing. Additionally, I was very interested in Western singing as well. So I kind of went in that direction. But again, I don't think that I saw performing on stage as something other than a fun activity until I was sometime in my teens. And I was pursuing a degree in law because I thought, that was what I wanted to do. I read way too many John Grisham novels, and so I had this sort of romanticized idea of what being a corporate lawyer was. And when I was somewhere through my degree in law, I'm like, wait, what I'm actually really passionate about, what's really moving me is music. And I always feel that music or a career in the arts isn't something you should do because it seems like fun. It's something that you should do because you can't be doing anything else. Like this is really your reason to wake up.
And what about your daughter Mahati? Is she also learning violin and piano and other instruments?
Absolutely. She learns the violin, the piano, and she sings. Currently, I think she's in the same mold that we were when we were her age, which is, music is great, but I want to be a gymnast, or I want to be like a hairstylist, or I want to be a baker, or so she's just doing music, and I think it's fun for her now, and it's important for us as a family to make sure that she learns music, but what she chooses to do with it at some point is entirely up to her.
How old is she now?
She's 9.5.
Okay. Could you tell us about your band, Subramania, which both of you started?
Yeah, so Ambi and I have two bands, which I'm sure he's spoken about, that we work together on. One is Subramania, and the other is the Taishalam project. Subramania started in 2013 and 14 because we sort of realized that we have been in the same family, we've been on stage together, but we really hadn't made music together, both of us. And so we thought, okay, let's kind of start a band and let's make music that makes sense to both of us. And it was very interesting because I think we started by coming from very different musical directions. I was coming from a much more kind of English pop space, and he was coming much more from a Carnatic space. And so the original few songs were kind of like, okay, so what am I doing and what are you doing? And then we sort of organically found this space of kind of contemporary world music where a lot of things fit in, and there are a lot of Carnatic elements, but there are also kind of elements of pop and jazz and global music. And so Subramania has kind of been an interesting space for us to explore different musical ideas.
Also, teaching is a very much a part of your heritage, and both of you are running a very successful teaching institution in Bangalore, Sappa.
Yeah, so as you said, our grandfather was a music teacher, and he was a great guru. But his real passion was teaching and giving music to people, and that's something that my father has continued. He started Sappa in 2007 because he wanted to create a home for global music in Bangalore. And Ambi and I have been actively involved in Sappa since 2011, and it was kind of our idea to help create the next generation of musicians, because I think it's really important to create an atmosphere where, you know, kids learn to love music, any kind of music. They should be able to love classical music, they should be able to love folk music, they should be able to love contemporary music, traditional music, and I think it's all about the way that it's presented. So through Sappa, we started teaching classical music to very young children, and we created what we call the Sappa Baby Method, where we teach serious classical music, but to children from the age of 3 or sometimes even younger. But we make the methodology fun. And then in 2014, we started the Sappa in Schools program because we felt there was a need to create high quality music education for children from the ages of 2.5 all the way through school years. And through Sappa in Schools, we've actually had a lot of fun. Maybe you want to say something about that?
We started teaching when they were 3, 4, and now they're like 10, 11, and it's really nice to see when kids and young musicians start having their own ideas.
And I think it's really great to look at the community of teachers that we have, because all the teachers that are kind of part of the Sappa community, the Sappa family as we call it, are so open-minded and so focused on the idea of giving high quality music education to all kids. It doesn't matter what background or circumstance they're from. We work with kids from NGO schools, we work with kids from government schools, and of course kids from more privileged backgrounds in private schools. But you see this teacher community working every single day to kind of come up with newer ideas, better methodologies, how we reach. And I think this lockdown and everything, it's been a perfect example of that, where, you know, overnight, how we had to bring music education for 30,000 children from something that was imparted face to face to something that's entirely online. And I think we're so lucky that we get to work with people who are like, okay, let's do this. Let's make something powerful. It might be scary, but we're going to do this.
You're talking about the lockdown, Bindu. So apart from teaching children online, what else have you been doing?
I have to say my cooking skills have improved. Ambi's cleaning skills have improved. But of course, there's been a lot of music, and there's been it's been interesting because I don't think we've ever spent this much time at home, being people who travel a lot. So it's really given us an opportunity to kind of look at what we want to be ourselves, whether it's, you know, for a brief time, I was like, okay, maybe I should meditate every day. It's beautiful. And then you have this opportunity to explore your music in a way that you wouldn't otherwise, because you're kind of looking at it more for yourself. You're looking at what it is that you want to do and how you want to do it. And I think that's a very powerful thing.
You said your cooking skills have improved. What do you like cooking?
Well, when we first started lockdown, I went from being kind of very unsure in the kitchen to making these very elaborate meals, like 6 or 7 or 8 dishes. And then I was like, okay, so today we're eating this North Indian spread, and in the morning we're eating like a full Iyer thali, and then okay, tonight is Chinese night. And then after a while I realized, okay, this is great. Now I know I can do it. Now I just need to make sure we feed everybody so nobody dies, and then we get back to work.
And what is the first thing that you would like to do once it is safe to go out?
I feel like I would lie. I feel like it would be a lie if I didn't say the beauty parlor. So
I think all of us want to go there. Thank you so much, Bindu and Ambi, for being on this show and for taking time out and for sharing your views with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you for
Thanks a
having
lot.
us.
Thank you. Thank you. ये तो था कला कहानी का आज का एपिसोड. डू टेल अस हाउ यू लाइक्ड इट. अगले एपिसोड में आपसे फिर मुलाकात होगी एक और कलाकार के साथ. तब तक के लिए गुड बाय एंड नमस्कार.